So today we'll discuss about Open SQL statements. ABAP Open SQL statements. What are Open SQL statements?
SQL.
So in ABAP we use Open SQL statements which are going to convert automatically according to the backend database. Okay, whatever the SQL statements we are using in ABAP, those are Open SQL statements. So depends on the backend database, system will automatically convert those Open SQL statements into native SQL statements. For example, one company might be using their database as Oracle. Different company might be using MS SQL or HANA, right, as their backend database. For example, if you write SQL statements which are compatible to Oracle, is it going to work or not? For example, you are writing a select statement which is compatible to Oracle database. Is it going to work or not? Answer, please.
No, sir.
For example, this current company using Oracle as their backend database, and we are writing SQL statements compatible for Oracle in ABAP application layer. Those statements will work. There is no issue. Okay, but we call them as Open SQL statements or native SQL statements.
Native.
Native SQL statements, because we are writing SQL
Yes.
statements compatible only for this Oracle database. Those are native SQL statements. So let's observe the scenario. For example, after 10 years, the company wants to cancel the license of Oracle database and they want to go with the new database, that is HANA. They want to replace their existing database with the HANA database. Now tell me, whatever the statements you have written in ABAP level for Oracle database, are the statements are going to work once the database got replaced with a new database?
What?
Are these statements are going to work? Whatever the statements you have written for Oracle database,
Work out then.
they won't work because you have written those for Oracle database. Those are compatible for Oracle database. Those are native to Oracle database. How they are going to work for HANA database? If you replace your database with HANA, right? Are they going to work?
No.
Because you changed your database and you are using SQL
New data.
statements compatible for HANA Oracle database. These SQL statements which are compatible for HANA SQL Oracle database will not work for new database. What you need to do then? Once you replaced your database with a new database, you need to change all these SQL statements in ABAP programs. Wherever you write SQL statements compatible for Oracle database, you have to again change it to HANA compatible SQL statements, right? Correct?
Yes. We have to change.
Then only your SQL statements, whatever you have written in the program, will work. For example, your select statements. Again, what are you doing? You are replacing Oracle native SQL statements with HANA native SQL statements. Then tell me, after 10 years, there is one more new database, available in the market that is most advanced database. Then your company wants to replace their existing HANA database with that new database. Now tell me, whatever the native SQL statements you have written, which are compatible for HANA, is it going to work for the new database once you replace the new database with HANA database?
No.
No.
No, because they are not compatible with new database.
The statements.
You have written there for HANA database, native to HANA database. Then what is the next step? Once you replace your database with a new database, you have to change all the programs in ABAP, right? Wherever you are using SQL statements compatible for HANA database, right?
Ah,
Right? Otherwise, all your programs are not going to work, right? So what is the solution for this? So we should use SQL statements which are suitable for all databases, right? Which are suitable for all databases, right? Then there is no dependency on the database. So we are going to write SQL statements in ABAP which are compatible for all other database. That is OpenSQL. Background, what will happen? Whatever the OpenSQL statements you are using in ABAP level, those will be converted into native SQL statements, right? This will happen in background. As a ABAP developer, you don't need to know what is happening behind the scenes and how it is converting. But you are going to use OpenSQL statements in ABAP level. Those statements will be automatically converted into relevant database native SQL statements, right? Clear? So what are the statements you have to write in ABAP?
open SQLs.
Always you have to write OpenSQL statements. So I'm not saying native SQL statements are not going to work. They will work. Native SQL statements will also work in your program, but it is not recommended to use native SQL statements in your programs. We should always use OpenSQL statements because of the
Common to any database.
dependency. So when you change, like when your company replace the existing database with a new database, then all your native SQL statements are not going to work. But if you write OpenSQL statements, you don't need to worry about the conversion. The system will automatically convert your OpenSQL statements into native SQL statements. Depends on the backend database. System will handle it. Okay, so that you don't need to change any SQL statements in your programs whenever there is a database migration or whenever there is a database replacement. Correct?
Okay, Anna.
Is it clear?
Yes.
So it is very important to understand this concept. Okay. Now, So today we'll discuss few open SQL statements we write in ABAP. First we'll see how many of you know what is DML, DCL, DDL?
DML, data manipulation language.
DDL
Data definition
language, DCL
language. Data convert
data control language.
control language.
So DDL means creating data definitions, like creating metadata. What is metadata? Tables, creating the table, creating data types,
Index,
tables, not indexes.
create
Creating a
index.
table. What is data definition means? Creating data definitions means creating tables, creating data types. You know, right, how to create a table in ABAP? We use some navigations. We are not going to write any SQL statements, but in other databases, what you have to write? You have to write SQL syntax that create table, field names, those corresponding data types, and you have to define what is the primary key. You have to use a SQL statement, right? But here we are using some navigations. So that is DDL, data definition language. Create table is the example for DDL, right? What is DML? Data manipulation language. Insertion, updating the
Insert,
records,
delete, to update,
deleting the
modify.
records. These all comes under DML. Here we deals with data, inserting a new record or deleting a record or changing the record. What is DCL? Data control language. This is about data access authorization. Okay. So you know you are already familiar with the DDL, but we are not writing any SQL statements here. When you follow the steps, right? When you go to SC11, enter the fields, select the primary key field, and go to technical settings and maintain the technical settings. When you click and activate the table, what will happen behind the scenes?
DDL.
The system will execute a create table statement in database. It will generate a create table statements behind the scenes, and it's going to execute in database level to create the table, right? But we are following some navigations. We are not writing SQL statement. The system is going to write that SQL statement in background. Okay.
Okay.
That is DDL. DDL means data definition language, creating tables, or we can also call metadata. DML, creating the actual data, that is values, right?
Update commands.
Yeah. What is data? What is metadata?
Insert to select to
What is metadata?
metadata. Create table.
Table.
Yeah, table is the example for metadata. Metadata definition is we call it as data about data. For example, there is a value student ID 100. What is the metadata of that 100?
Student.
Student ID. Metadata is student ID field and the data type and length. This is metadata about that field value. Clear? Now, we'll see some DML statements. So, whatever the statements we are writing in ABAP, we have to write it in OpenSQL only, so that there is no dependency on the database. In future, if there is any database migration or database change, you don't need to change all your code, because native SQL statements are not going to work on different database. Okay. First we'll see insert,
It
update, modify, delete. So what is insert statement? Create new record in database table. What is update statement?
Change value from the data.
To change the value existing.
We're going to change value of the existing record. Okay.
Like change the value.
So modify is combination of update and insert. If there is a record which you are trying to change, if it is already there in the table, it will just update that value, right? For example, whatever the record you are trying to change is not available in the table, what it will do? It will
Modify.
create a new record in the table. Okay. Modify is combination of insert and update. Update, what will happen with update? For example, if you are trying to change student ID record 100 in the student ID table, if that student ID record is there in the table, it will change that record. For example, if you are trying to change city of student, for example, current city is Hyderabad, and if you want to change that city to Chennai, what you need to do? You need to write update statement, and it will change the city from Hyderabad to Chennai. So that changes will happen. For example, if that student ID 100 is not available in the table, what will happen? The update statement will fail because whatever the record you are trying to change is not available in the table, right? But if you use modify statement instead of update, if that student ID 100 record is there in the table, it will change it, change the city value from Hyderabad to Chennai. For example, if that record is not available in the table, what will happen? It's not
It
going
will
to
not
fail.
change.
It will create a new record with that student ID 100. Okay. So modify is combination of update and insert.
Update and insert.
If the record is already there, it will update it. If that record is not there, it will insert it. Okay. Okay. Now let's work on the system. First, let's create one custom table, or we'll use some existing custom table. We'll take ZDemo employee table. What are the fields of ZDemo employee? Employee ID,
Employee
employee name,
ID,
department
employee
ID,
name,
phone, city,
department ID,
country, and
phones.
gender. Now what? So I have to create a record in this table. What is the statement I have to use? If I need to create a new record, create a record. To create a record, it is insert. To read all to read the existing record, to read the record and display it as output, we are using select statement. But to create a new record in the table, what is the statement we have to use? So for
Insert.
example, so to display the data, whatever the data here, so when I click on this, what is the statement that is going to execute in background?
SQL. Open SQL sheet.
Yeah, what is the type of statement? It is going to execute a select statement, right? So here itself, I'll show you one more option. For example, if you want to transport this table entries to test system, how can you transport? In table entries, you can find the option transport entries. Then it will ask for a transport request. All these records will be added to this transport
C09.
request, and you can release this transport request to test system. Okay. Okay. This is select statement. So when you are trying to display the data, what is the statement that is executing in background?
Select.
Select statement, right? But when you need to create a new record in the table, for example, how we are creating, go back, how we are creating a new record in this table?
Go to utility.
Utilities, table
Table
contents,
contain
create entries.
area.
What is this create entries?
Creating.
Creating a new record. Insert statement will execute in background when you click on save. Clear? For example, yeah, it will create a new record. To change it, to change the record again, here we are doing, go to create entries,
That
contents.
is table contain.
You are providing
Creating.
the key. I think we cannot change it. You can change here. Select one record, click on this, change. Now what is the statement that now I want to update Hyderabad as
Yes.
Chennai. Now what statement will execute in background?
Update.
Update statement will execute in background. Save. Now update statement is executed and city got changed.
Modify also.
Chennai. I changed to Chennai. Okay. Modify is also similar. For example, if you are trying to change this, if this 10T is already there, this 102 record is already there in the table, it will which statement, which operation will trigger update? For example, if this 102 is not available, then what will happen? It's going to create one new record, that is 102, with all this data. Just like insert, if there is already a record, it will just change the values. If that record is not available, what will happen? Create new records. Create new record. Okay.
1998 does not exist.
Now, okay, there is no delete option here. Now we'll go to the program. You got it, right? This is selecting data, selecting existing data to read the existing data in the table. That is select statement. Okay. Now create a program for our DDL statements, DML statements.
DL statement. Dml.
What I'll do, so I'll apply these statements on this table, Zdemo employee table. Okay. Or I'll do one thing. I'll just copy this table so that I'm not going to disturb it. Zdemo Open SQL. See, when I copy this table, are we going to copy the table metadata or including table data?
Table data also.
So go to Open SQL and display data. Is there any data in it?
Data entries form.
Is there any data in this
లేదు.
table?
No, we have to
So we are
create.
going to copy only metadata, not the data. When you copy the table or data type, okay. Now, what are the fields we have? So employee ID is the primary key. Can we create same employee ID record again?
No.
So it won't accept because employee ID is the primary key. Let's take all these fields. Let's create some parameters to enter the data. So in table, just observe. If you go to utilities, table contents, create entries, it is displaying some screen here, right? To enter the data and click on save. We'll also create
Yes.
similar parameters to enter the data in program using parameters. Type the empid, type the name, type department.
Like type structure you have to.
Why type structure? So we are defining parameters to enter the user input. So user will enter the data for all these fields and click on save so that it should save in the database. Activate. Is there any fields with more than 8 characters? Actually, you have to use p underscore. Remember, For all the parameters, we need to use p underscore. That is the naming convention. So employee ID, because, and then I don't want to maintain text elements now. That's why let's keep as it is. You should maintain text elements, please remember. Should maintain text elements for all these data elements. So this is my input screen where I'll enter employee ID, employee name, department ID, phone number, city, country, and gender, and click on save or execute. What it should do?
Will save.
It should create a new record or change the existing record or delete the existing record. Depends on the operation. Okay. Now initialization, get selection screen. Now tell me what is the important validation here?
Employee ID.
Why?
Employee ID is primary key.
Because employee ID is primary key. That's why there should be at least value for employee ID. Remaining values might be blank, but there should be a value for employee ID, right? So write that validation, or whatever the fields you think they are important, add the validation. If empid is initial, or I'm also using employee name also, okay? Because there is no meaning, right? If you create data with only ID, employee name is initial, and if message, you have to use text symbol. Don't use hard coded text like this.
Text 001.
Define the text and use the text here. Don't use hard coded text. Never, okay?
మనం రెండు యూజ్ చేస్తున్నాం కదా, ఏది నాన్
What is
కోటెడ్
it?
అని ఎలా
What is
తెలుసు?
it? What is it? If or I'm using or statement, right? If any one is blank, it will trigger this. Okay.
మెసేజ్.
If this is blank or this is blank, employee name is blank, then it will trigger this message. If you use and, what will happen? There should be employee ID and there should be employee name. Both should be available if you are using and. Okay. Because there is no meaning in using employee name. Or we can also use and. If both are empty, then we are going to trigger this message. Okay. But here, if you enter employee name and keep employee ID as blank, then this validation will fail, right? It will accept. This error message will not trigger. I don't want to confuse. If employee ID is blank, we are going to display the error message. Now, what next?
Select.
Select. What are we doing now? What are we doing now? Creating new records. We are
Creating
not
records.
selecting the data. So first,
Creating
what is
the
your
records.
table? What is your table name? This is the one, right?
Dml Open SQL.
Define one data work area for this.
Cheers.
Now here, hyphen
Employee ID
equal to this parameter value, whatever the data user is entering in the screen, right?
Great. 200.
Apply the same for rest of the fields. What is important here? You have to define an internal table with the reference of table name. Whatever the table you are applying these operations, insert, update, delete, modify. That is important. Employee name, parameter name is also same, right? Usually this is not the proper naming convention for parameters. Okay, when you are writing the program, use proper naming conventions for parameters. City,
Instead of employee ID, we can write employee ID, sir.
employee,
ఎంప్లాయీ ఐడి దగ్గర మనం ఐడి రాయాలి సార్ లేకపోతే ఇలాగే రాసేయాలి
what is your parameter?
పారామీటర్ ఎంప్లాయీ ఐడి
Employee ID, right?
p
And use that parameter name here. That might be p underscore also.
p_.
That's what I'm telling you. I'm not following
ఓకే
proper naming convention here, but you guys have to follow proper naming convention. Okay,
ఓకే
gender. Now what
పెండ్
next?
పెండ్
Right? So what is your requirement here? Whatever the data I have entered in the screen, that should create in a table. For this, if is not initial, and if, what is the statement you have to write to create a new record in the table? To create a new record in the table, what is the statement you have to write? What is the DML statement you have to write to create a new record in the table? Insert, update, modify, or delete?
Insert. Insert.
Insert. What next? Your table name. What is the table you are inserting the data? From where is your data? The data which you want to insert, where is the data available now? This work area, right?
Yes, employee.
Right? So we are going to create one new record here. How can you handle whether this insert statement is successful or failed? How can you
Yes.
handle that? How can you know that whether this insert statement is successfully completed or failed? How can you know?
Where condition?
Always remember, we use sy
Subversive.
sub rc equal to 0. That means successful.
knowing the status
Else failed. Else means other than 0. Clear? If it is successful, what is the statement we have to write? Commit work. Otherwise, rollback work. What is commit work and rollback work?
work means continue
It will confirm the changes in database table. It will commit the changes in database table. Insert statement, when you execute the insert statement, it will take the data into table level. But once you execute the commit work only, those changes will be permanently applied to the table. Until you don't execute commit work, whatever the statements you like, whatever the record you have created using insert, that's not going to be stored in the table permanently. Once you use commit work, then that particular record is going to store in the table permanently. Okay, is it clear?
Clear.
What is rollback work? Reverting
Back.
Reverting it. So if there is something wrong, we are reverting this insert statement, we are canceling this insert statement. Okay, commit work means confirming the insert statement, right? Right. Now, do we have any records in the table?
No.
This is a new table, there is no records. Let's enter some data.
How to
Execute the program. I'm keeping the breakpoint here. Execute the program. So enter employee ID 100, employee name, name of 100, department ID, SAP, phone, some phone number, city, Hyderabad, country, IN,
N
gender,
M.
M. Click on execute. Now we are filling the work area. Whatever the values available in the parameter, we are passing that all the values to work area. Okay. So we filled this work area. So we have data in work area,
One
right?
record.
Now, if it is not initial means there is some data in work area, then execute our insert statement. F5. What is the sub-RC value? Success or failure?
0.
0 means success.
Success.
Then
Okay.
execute the commit work. F8. So I'm not displaying any message, success or error message. Now let's go to the table and check how many records we have.
One record.
One record. Same record, right? Inserted. Clear? Now let's try one more time. I'm not changing the employee ID and executing again. Is it going to create a new record or not?
No.
So I'm filling. Click on F6. What is the sub-RC?
4.
Why?
4.
Because we are using same primary key.
Same.
Then roll back. Then try with different.
Two events.
Insert. Sub-RC is 0, right? Created one more record. Right? Clear?
Okay.
This is how we use insert statement. So tell me what is MM01 transaction code?
Creating record.
Creating a new material master data. MM01 means creating new material master record. Now when you execute that, when you enter the data in that material master screen and click on save, what will happen? In background, there are some insert statements which are going to run and insert the data into Mara table, right? So what is the statement that is going to insert in background? Execute in background, insert statement. If you go to MM02, what is MM02 transaction code?
Change.
Change the existing record, right? What is the corresponding DML statement for that?
Update.
Update. It's going to update the existing material master data, right? Or if you are deleting the material master data, it will execute delete statement, right? Okay, I'm stopping here, and in the next session we will discuss the remaining DML statements.